Over the years, many movie studios have taken a crack at launching a film franchise based on a popular video game series. Although there have been some successes both commercially and critically, it seems like more often than not, these attempts fail rather than succeed. 2024's Borderlands is a classic example of one of these failed attempts. In another world, it could have been a successful film franchise, but after spending years in production hell, the end product was so abysmal that it lost millions upon millions of dollars. So today, I want to take another look at this failed franchise starter, to dive into the troubled history, explore the many reasons why it failed, and offer up some of my thoughts on the project. Talks surrounding a feature film adaptation of the Borderlands video games first arose way back in 2011. Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford was convinced a film adaptation would work after the release of the Telltale game Tales from the Borderlands, and discussed the possibility with film producers Avi and Ari Arad. They brought the idea to Lionsgate, where it sat for a time. Work really started to kick off around the time Mad Max Fury Road came out in 2015, as the Invisible Man and Wolfman director, Lee Winnell, began to circle the project. However, when the movie was officially announced in August of the same year, Winnell's name was no longer attached. Screenwriter Aaron Berg was brought on to write the script in early 2016, but by June of 2018, he was replaced by Oren Uzel. The script went through another round of revisions by Chernobyl creator and The Last of Us co-creator Craig Mazin, and in the beginning of 2020, a director was finally found with Eli Roth, who you may know from horror films such as Hostel, Thanksgiving, and Knock Knock. The script went through several more rounds of revisions done by Tony Rettenmeyer, Jewel Taylor, Chris Bremner, Sam Levinson, and Roth himself. By May of 2020, the cast began to assemble, with Cate Blanchett in the lead role of Lilith, who had previously worked with Roth on The House with the Clock in Its Walls. Other big names were added later in 2021, such as Kevin Hart as Roland, Jamie Lee Curtis as Tannis, Ariana Greenblatt as Tiny Tina, and Jack Black as Claptrap. Principal photography kicked off in April of 2021 in Hungary and lasted until June. It was then sent off to post-production, where it sat for nearly 2 years. And this is where many of the rumors of production troubles surrounding this film began to sprout up. As the story goes, Eli Roth shot the film with an R rating in mind, keeping it closer to the style of the M rating held by the original Borderlands video games. However, when the studio saw the extreme violence of these early cuts, they wanted Roth to reshoot parts of the film to tone it down so they could have a more family-friendly PG-13 rating. Roth refused to return to the project due to studio interference and poor test screenings, and that's when Deadpool director Tim Miller was brought on for 2 weeks of reshoots with new pages written by Bullet Train screenwriter Zach Olkowitz. However, other sources stated that Roth didn't return because he was busy making Thanksgiving, not because of studio interference. Additionally, in an interview with Fox in August of 2024, Roth stated that it was always intended to be a family film. Here's a quote. "Obviously, the game is super violent, but I wanted to make a movie that you could take, if you were 9, 10, 11 years old, like the way I was when I saw Star Wars or Fifth Element. You would just lose your mind for a movie like Borderlands. It's definitely a movie that parents can take their kids to. You grab a bucket of popcorn, you turn your brain off, and you just have a good time." But at the same time, the stunt coordinator for the film, Jimmy O.D., said in an interview that they shot tons of gory stuff, like people's heads getting blown off and feet getting chopped off. As you can see, there are many conflicting reports over what actually happened to this movie behind the scenes, but I'm sure as more time passes, we will learn more. Personally, I'm inclined to believe that it was originally shot to be R-rated. It's also worth noting that in June of 2023, Craig Mazin removed his name from the project. Many people assume that the credited co-writer of the film, Joe Abercrombie, was a pseudonym Mazin used, but he shot this notion down, stating this in an interview with Variety. "I am not a credited writer on the film, so I cannot claim any kind of authorship of Borderlands, much less co-writing. I did see the report about the pseudonym, which is false. I did not use a pseudonym. If the name in question is indeed a pseudonym, all I can say is, it's not mine." All in all, it's safe to say that the production of this film was an absolute mess, and by the time the movie was ready to hit theaters, the budget was estimated to be around $110 to $120 million. Additionally, it's reported that Lionsgate spent $30 million on print and advertising, so the pressure was on for this film to perform well at the theater. Borderlands was initially slated for a 2022 release, but it was pushed back to August 9th of 2024. It debuted at number 4 in the box office behind Deadpool and Wolverine, It Ends With Us, and Twisters, for an abysmal opening weekend gross of $8 million. In the US, it went on to make $15 million, and overseas it made $17 million for a total worldwide gross of $33 million. Deadline Hollywood calculated the film's net loss at around $80 million, making it one of the biggest box office bombs of 2024, only beaten out by Joker 2 and Furiosa. And as is the case with box office bombs nowadays, the film was sent to streaming less than 3 months after it debuted in theaters. Now that we know the troubled history behind the film, let's dig into the many reasons why it failed so hard commercially. When it comes to 2024's Borderlands, pretty much everything went wrong, and it resulted in a perfect storm of a humongous bomb. Even Lionsgate CEO John Feltenheimer would say this in a conference call with investors. Nearly everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It sat on a shelf for too long during the pandemic, and reshoots and rising interest rates took it outside the safety zone of our usual strict financial models. First off, the trailer is just terrible. Just like the movie itself, it contained all the tired tropes and cliches we've come to expect from low-quality tentpole films like this. And all the jokes that were included were just plain bad. Many people could tell right off the bat that this was going to fail, and no one made an effort to see this thing in theaters. I mean, in the opening shot of the trailer, you can literally see a crew member in frame helping open the hatch. And this ties into the film's marketing in general. As I stated earlier, Lionsgate only spent $30 million on marketing and distribution, which is very much on the low end for a blockbuster of this size. I have a feeling Lionsgate had very little confidence in this movie in the first place, so they tried to make the smallest impact they could so they could quietly sweep it under the rug and have people forget about it. In fact, the company behind the Borderlands video games, Gearbox, announced Borderlands 4 just 2 weeks after the release of the movie, and many people gathered that this announcement was strategically timed to deflect from the film's critical reception. The casting of the film also upset a majority of the fanbase of the original games, as none of the actors fit the characters and it came off as stunt casting. In fact, pretty much everything about this movie upset the fanbase. As a result, a lot of people who were supposed to be the intended demographic swore off the film and did not support it in any way. The reality is, this movie should have come out around 2015, back when work first began on the project and the game's popularity was much bigger. Yes, it was still a well-known game in 2024, but it wasn't at the forefront of pop culture like in the early to mid-2010s. The movie was also getting negative press from every angle, such as when a visual effects artist who worked on the rigging of the claptrap model for 5 months stated that he nor the artist who modeled him got any credits on the film. This, combined with all the production troubles we talked about in the previous section, told everyone everything they needed to know about how doomed this project was. We also need to consider competition at the box office. Borderlands dropped just 2 weeks after Deadpool and Wolverine, which was the second biggest movie of the year and went on to gross over $1 billion. In its third weekend, it made more than Borderlands did in its entire run. To add insult to injury, Deadpool and Wolverine had the exact same intended demographic that Borderlands was trying to swoop up. The humor in Borderlands is shamelessly trying to copy that quirky, crass humor that the Deadpool movies utilize so well. Borderlands debuted the same exact weekend as It Ends With Us, which was also a big financial success, and it fell behind Twisters, which was also doing solid numbers. There was just too many other better films to watch instead of this piece of crap. And this, of course, leads into the terrible reviews. Borderlands debuted with a rare 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and although it would eventually rise to a 10% as more reviews came in, the damage was already done. The audience score wasn't much better at a rotten 49%. This movie didn't appeal to fans or general audiences, so it was simply made for no one. In addition to these scores, it also landed a 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb, a 1.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and it secured 6 Golden Raspberry Awards. These were for Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actress, Worst Supporting Actor for both Jack Black and Kevin Hart, and Worst Screen Combo for any 2 obnoxious characters, but especially Jack Black. However, it failed to win any of these categories, so it's not even good at being bad. Now that we've covered why this movie failed commercially, let's explore why it failed as a movie. I'll offer up some of my thoughts on why this sucks. I would like to preface this section by saying I have not played any of the Borderlands games, so I am not familiar with any of the lore of the world. So this review is just from your average theater goer. My gripes may be different from fans of the series, but I'm sure many will be the same. Yeah, Borderlands is abysmal. There's no other way to say it. This is just straight up heartless slop that deserved to fail. That's a word you're going to see pop up a lot in this video because that's just the best way to describe this. It's sanded down, overproduced slop that doesn't have a purpose. It's not a movie, it's content. But before I tear into this slop, let's acknowledge the good of the film. Some of the art direction is fun. Anyways, on to the bad. This is just a sloppy movie through and through, from the technical elements to the writing to the performances. I mean, this entire movie looks and feels like it was entirely shot on a soundstage. While this can work for other films like Tron Legacy and other sci-fi movies in that vein, it didn't work for Borderlands because everything looked fake and cheap. You never buy that any of these characters are in any of these locations. The visual effects are about as bad as you would expect. There are countless shots that totally break your immersion and are just laughable. This film is really committing to the video game aesthetic, as these effects are video game cutscene quality. The performances are a major weak spot, which is crazy because on paper, this is a very talented cast that has been in great stuff before, but none of these actors fit their characters. Borderlands might be up there with Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets for the worst casting I've ever seen in a movie. There's truly baffling decisions where it feels like the casting director just threw a dart on a board that had a bunch of famous actors' faces on it. There's no rhyme or reason. Not to mention, all these characters are just forgettable and grating. It's like they're all having a competition on who can be the most annoying, but they're all winning. Cate Blanchett is one of the greatest actors working today, but not even she could salvage this terrible script. They try to play around with some emotional beats, with Cate Blanchett's character being a surrogate mother to Ariana Greenblatt's character, but they don't take any meaningful steps to actually make you care about them first. Kevin Hart, it's just kind of here. He's playing against his usual type as he's more stoic and serious in this, but it just doesn't land. Additionally, the character of Krieg has no purpose in the story, and all his ADR lines are insanely bad. With Jack Black's Claptrap, you can see some of the roots for his Steve performance in Minecraft. In the place of actual jokes, he is just pronouncing words funny and says phrases in a weird way. Even though Minecraft isn't a masterpiece, at least you could still see Jack Black's face and all the physical comedy he was doing. But with this, there's none of it. Then there's Jamie Lee Curtis's character, who I could not tell you a single unique thing about. It's all just useless, pointless, soulless slop through and through. Unfortunately, none of the humor in this movie lands at all, which is extra bad since it's supposed to be a comedy. The humor is one of the areas where you can tell this was recut from an R rating. There are just some insanely bizarre line readings where I could not understand what the directors or actors were trying to get across in a given scene. And the same thing goes for the action. The blocking is extremely bland and lacks any flavor. There's no memorable scenes or big moments when our characters do something interesting. It all boils down to pointing and shooting, which gets extremely dull after the first couple of action set pieces. You can really tell that this movie was recut to hell and back in the final act. The villains just kind of show up while our heroes are trying to get into this mysterious vault. We get a bunch of shots of what I assume is the leader of the Psychos, and then the movie acts like he's been in the story the entire time. He has a battle with Krieg, and I assume there was some backstory that was cut out about them being rivals or something, but who knows? I guess we'll never know. And then when we finally get into the vault that they've been hyping up the entire movie, it's just filled with a bunch of floating boxes. I'm sure game fans will know what these are, but to the average Joe like me, I didn't know what the hell was going on and what these are supposed to be. Then there's a random tentacle monster that just grabs the main villain, and then the day is saved and everyone on the planet has a dance party to celebrate. It is the most undeserved ending you could imagine. Let's end this review with the writing, as this is really the source of all the film's problems. I mean, you would think with close to 10 screenwriters, the script would be a little better than this.
Oh yeah? You in what army?
The one right behind me.
The writing is so cliche and derivative. The character arcs it's tackling is stuff you've seen a million times before, but just done 10 times worse. As soon as the movie started off with the Chosen One prophecy, I could feel my eyes glazing over. Borderlands is shamelessly trying to cash in on the found family trope that you see in movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and Dungeons and Dragons. The problem is that none of these characters have any chemistry with each other or interesting and unique dynamics. It's just slop. Slop, slop, slop. It's just terrible. It's a bad movie. I hate it. Okay, the more I talk about this movie, the more pissed off I get. Let's wrap this up before I have a heart attack. Borderlands is absolute slop. After going through rewrite after rewrite after reshoot after recut, The end product was a boring, basic mess that missed with fans of the series and general audiences. It went on to become one of the biggest box office flops of the year and ended up as a punching bag rather than a piece of art with substance. So that's the story of 2024's Borderlands, yet another video game movie that failed to launch. But what are your thoughts on the film? Have you seen it? How does it compare to the games? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. No clue for next week's video, but I'll just say it's going to be very stupid. So keep that in mind.